we'll ask Rabbi Zalman to speak to us on our theme.
All honor to the chain of transmission of our tradition, to the elders of the First Nations here. All honor to the Dharma bearers that produced His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. All honor to the apostolic transmission, that tradition that produced Bishop Tutu. And all honor to the silsila of Professor Shireen. Salam, salam. I begin with a prayer, source of time and space, Avinu Malkeinu. From infinity, draw down to us the great renewal and attune us to your intent so that wisdom, your daughter, flow into our awareness to awaken us to see ahead so that we help instead of harm. May all the devices we make and use be sparing and protecting of your creation. Help us, God, to set right what we have debased, to heal what we have made ill, to care for and to restore what we have injured. Bless our earth, our home, and show us all how to care for her, so that we might live your promise given to our forebears, to live heavenly days right here on this earth. May all the beings you have fashioned become aware that it is you who has given them being. May we realize that you shaped our lives, and may each one who breathes join with others who breathe in the delight of shared knowing of the great breath. Assist us in learning how to partner with family, neighbors, and friends. Aid us in dissolving old enmities. May we come to honor even in those whom we fear, your image and form, your light dwelling in their hearts. We pray for Václav Havel, who couldn't be with us today. May his health be restored. May he be able to teach and continue to share with people a vision of enlightened government that we could use on both sides of the Atlantic at this time. May we soon see the day when your house will indeed be the house of prayer for all peoples, named and celebrated in every tongue and speech. And on that day, you will be one, and one with all of cosmic life. Amen. I look like somebody from Fiddler on the Roof. To life, l'chaim. The problems we face at this time don't seem to yield to the solutions of traditions and lineages which they have provided us in the past. I've honored the traditions and the lineages, and at the same time, when I look back, I see that each one of our traditions built a high degree of surface tension and saw itself sharply separate from others. Often when they made universalistic statements, they made them in subtle and not so subtle ways, in ways that people now call inclusivistic. That's to say, if you come under our umbrella as a lesser adjunct, as a minor satellite, we will legitimate you. Still, the attitude is basically triumphalistic. When the Mashiach comes, when Christ appears, when the Mahdi comes back, when the Avatar shows up, when Maitreya comes, we will be proven right, and you will end up on a lesser plane than we. Then came Auschwitz, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, the moonwalk, the internet, And now we can no longer afford any reality map that doesn't base itself on organismic life, a view that sees us part of this living Gaia, this living planet. Our traditional theologians, in order to defend themselves against existential terror and high anxiety, the spiritual vacuum in which they have to preach, have by and large been co-opted by the haves, who have deep pockets, who like to hold on to the status quo, or by the have-nots, who want to return to implausible security, give me that old-time religion. More and more, we have deep-thinking eco-theologians who come to the conclusion that each religion is a vital organ of the planet, and that we, for the planet's sake, need, each one of us, in order to stay alive, become devout in the most healthy way we can manage. Hence, for all my universalism, I need to be the healthiest Jew I can be, and urge my co-religionists to become the best and healthiest Jews they can be in order to contribute to the healing of the planet. While I've gained much help from our tradition, which provided me with sacred tools and means to higher consciousness, many of them seem not to be immediately applicable to our current situation. However, there is a revelation coming down to us from helpers above our ken, as well as the result of the chthonic push from below, from our Mother the Earth. This leads me not so much to offer answers as to raise questions. Therefore, my contribution will be to raise questions, and all these questions are intertwined. As each generation comes, it needs answers for the problems which the old answers have created. Example, we figured nuclear fuel is going to be great, yeah? Pesticides will be good, herbicides will be good. Soon we will have to deal with questions of genetic engineering, which is creating bioengineered plants, and who knows how soon we will have to be troubled by deviations in human genetic stock. The urge we experience to grow in awareness is often blocked and opposed by forces that want to cut us off from that urge that comes from above and from below, as our native people are saying, from Father Sky and Mother Earth. And they want to addict us with mind-deadening distractions. Look at the media. Yet at a meeting like this one, we want to amplify that urge that comes from above and from below, that push of our Earth's need of healing, as well as the pull of a vision of organismic health that wants to birth itself. Here, we want to wake up others and wake up ourselves to even more awakeness. My daughter once asked me the question, Abba, when you're asleep, you can wake up, yes? And when you're awake, can you wake up even more? This is what we need to do here, to wake up even more. We have been habituated to find the easiest and most immediate answers so that we don't stay in the anxiety of holding on to questions. But the answers that are easily available don't work to stave off the impending disaster of the ever-accelerating global dying. So, what are some of the questions? First, what ideas of cosmology do we have to have in order to approach the healing of the planet? None of us yet have a blueprint of the mind that helps us deal with the need to heal the planet. Apparently, the reality map we have at this time is not correct. Our sense of the direction to which the possible harmonious life matrix points demand that we change that map. But creativity does not reside in the way we are imprisoned to repeat precedent. Creativity is daring. It wants us to be outrageous, to play with the least probable possibilities, the ones more weird and spiritual, where we might find answers. These possibility forms dance before the mind's eye. And from that vision, there emerges an unexpected form with its creative proposal, and therefore a new way to understand the map of reality. We need to learn this process of questing in order to discover, and this is urgent, to co-create with the integral planetary mind, the cosmology we have to have in order to approach the healing of the planet. Secondly, what is the basic health ethic arising from that new cosmology? The cosmology of the Industrial Revolution gave us an ethos to productivity at any cost. The cosmology of corporate capitalism pushes an ethos to consumption at any cost. The cosmology we seek to find should produce first and foremost an ethos that honors harmonious biological health in the individual and in the matrix of our environment. In order to create this cosmology, we can no longer rely on an individual mind. The complexity, and with it the responsibility of what we have to mind in the world and in life, is far too great to be left to one person. The only way to get it together is together. I plead for research that would discover what it takes to enable us to operate in webs of consciousness, of mind networks, at least for a small group of prepared minds to seek to merge dreams and behold visions. These people would serve as our psychonauts and contact minds of much higher regions. We are quite underdeveloped in this area. We have very low ideas of how groups really work. While there is immense sophistication in technological area of military systems and lethal weapons of mass destruction, we are very low in our understanding of how to handle conflict resolution. Much research needs to be done to help us to be optimal in social and political harmony, and this cannot wait. This research cannot wait. What do we need to do in order that there be this cultural revolution that's now urgently needed? I've often challenged educators to plan curricula for handling information with ecological wisdom. We've got lots of information, very little wisdom. I've challenged them for formation of character, for education of the heart, for raising the emotional IQ, for teaching skills of cooperation that would produce the adepts, the saints, the arhants, the tzaddikim, the rishis, the bodhisattvas, the shamans, which we will need at this time. Thirdly, what are the upaya, the skillful means, which are needed to lift the cultural trance and launch the awareness of this emerging cosmology? Current consensus mind leads us to ever greater crisis. We must do the miraculous work of altering millions of people's awareness. We must go deeper and deeper into regions where we cannot use the effort of muscles or of logic. Regions where only awareness can shift awareness, which is, as one of my friends remarked, changing the tires while the car is running, and at such great speed. We need to update the inner resources of our spiritual traditions that once worked well, but which were associated with flesh-rejecting monastic asceticism. If your suggestion to me is beyond 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening for spiritual practice, I can't do it. I won't do it. And the old traditions demand more time than I can afford. So we need to look for what works of the old techniques and enhance their yield by learning to attune our consciousness to optimal transformational power. These actions take place in other regions than the mind of the shopping mall. When I think of the turbulent mind space that we inhabit, I get close to schizophrenia. I cannot hear the choral symphonic music of a sacred common dream. Just as people once lamented about the twilight of the gods, we now experience the twilight of life-affirming archetypes. How can we access them? How can we empower them? How can they empower us? We have come to realize that we are not on the top of the chain of being. What do we as spiritual people have as a means for accessing the waiting helpers from higher planes? What do we need to do to address the matrix of the life process on the subtle plane to gain understanding of the deeper life processes? Only then can we embark on designing the needed education of heart and spirit. Last, what advancements in psychology, anthropology, biology, physics, medicine, philosophy, political science, theology, spiritual technologies, economics, the arts, communication, and most of all the ethics that we need in order to heal the planet? So the big question remains. The current state of the disciplines of transpersonal psychology, transpersonal sociology are too primitive to handle our crisis. You who are here, my colleagues on the dais, as well as you in the audience, I invite you to help find the answers to the questions I raised. We need to relearn the technology of blessings. May the people who organized this event, the people who contributed with effort and finances, may we who spoke and you who listened be blessed with energy, vigor, resourcefulness, joy, health and well-being, harmony in your family life and work life to actualize the new hope. And may the words of my mouth and the concerns in our hearts be received and responded to by the one in whom we find refuge and redemption. Amen. Say something about the way in which our language operates. For technology, we have good language. For reason and logic, we have good language. When it comes to feeling, we have a very small vocabulary. The poets have given us a larger vocabulary, but in the world, we haven't developed the vocabulary of the heart. And whenever there is consciousness that doesn't have vocabulary, it seems to shrink away into avidya, not knowing. And so it's necessary to create more heart language. What is also necessary is to create more, when we speak of faith and the higher levels and so on, we need language for intuition. And our intuition is mute. At this point, we don't have any words for intuition. If somebody says something to you, but I intuit, when I go to medicine people, shamans and so on and so forth, and you ask them the question, tell me, how do you know? How could they say how they know? They were there, they experienced, they knew. And so it is also with people who say, I've been born again, and you ask them, how do you know? How do you know? Because we haven't developed the language, and I think our problem for education is to create more language for heart and more language for soul. I would like to say, Your Holiness, that the God you don't believe in, I don't believe in either.
Yes.
You look more serious now.
No.
If I may address this to His Holiness, when we were in Dharamsala, the question was, how can the Tibetan communities survive in a diaspora? When I look around, we are all in a diaspora today. The First Nations have had to go and be in a diaspora in reservations. The people who have come here from abroad are in a diaspora too. There's hardly anybody who is not in a diaspora, which meant that the question of how do we build an intentional society in a time when the neighborhoods have been killed by the automobile. You don't go shopping in your immediate neighborhood. You don't sit on the porch anymore and talk to people. Hardly anybody has come to our house knocking on the door saying, "Hey, could I borrow a cup of sugar from you?" And when you start asking how this works out, the question comes, how do we build this community? Because ever since the time of the Renaissance, we have been, how would I say, exalting the individual and not the community, which meant that with the social mobility that we have, grandparents and grandchildren, and look at my grandchildren, we are not living in the same community anymore, which means that all that we have is our parents, and with our parents, we are enemies. With our grandparents, we have a common ally. And when grandparents pass on meaningful things to grandchildren, then values, family values, get passed on. And I look back at the kibbutz movement, which was such a remarkable way of trying to create intentional community. Conscious, intentional community. And most of the time, those of you who can still remember the days in Haight-Ashbury and the communes that people had, and where are they today? Because what happens is that most of the time, the people who are embracing a new spiritual path only have they're just a one-generation phenomenon. Show me the children and the grandchildren of people who have embraced one of the new religions, if you will. So we are in trouble. And I think I wish I could say here in this place or in that place we have a model community. All that we can do is share with each other right now the little bit of know-how that we have of collaboration. When I go back to the time I lived in Winnipeg, and I walked around McGregor Avenue, and I would see there that the Ukrainians had their self-help organization, the Polish people had their self-help organization, and so there was always the Jewish people had their self-help organization, and so there was a coherence. But that coherence has broken up as we moved out of those neighborhoods and no longer had the people help each other. The confraternities that were in various religious groups are not functioning as well anymore. And whatever the president that we have in the United States says about faith-based charity, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Neither about faith, nor about charity, nor about a basis. So I feel that as we are both in exile, as it were, that we need to talk to each other and help our diaspora communities create coherent ways, and we need to work on that.
My name is Alexandra Chan. I'm a Collingwood grade 12 student, and Collingwood School is located in West Vancouver. Now, before I address my question, I'd first like to thank the honorary panel. I feel completely honored to be in your presence and to have this opportunity. We live in a society that seems to place a greater value on personal acquisition of material goods than on the development of the community as a whole. This emphasis on individual gain favors isolation over communal spirit and precludes the building of a healthy and sustainable community. I'd like to address my question to Rabbi Zalman Schachter-Shalomi and ask him how, within the context of our relatively isolated and material-oriented society, how is it possible for us to facilitate and nurture the importance of educating the heart and spirit to the youth who are tomorrow's future leaders?
Stay here. All right. Let's both of us stay here. Do you mind playing with me a bit?
Oh, no,
No?
it would
Okay.
be wonderful.
All right. Have you seen some Star Trek things about the mind meld?
I used to be a huge fan.
Right? So let's do a mind meld. And a good question is already half of the answer.
Thank you.
So what do you think would be the answer? Let's do this together.
What do I feel would be the answer? With my limited 17 years of life experience, I feel that our society is too heavily weighted towards academics and educating merely just the mental proportion, and that we need somehow to be able to institute within almost the school system an ability to institute educating the heart, which would be instilling compassion within youth.
You know, what you're saying is so important because you represent what we call in our tradition the Shechina, the feminine divine presence. And before up to now, patriarchy has always dealt with discrete items of education, of information. The glue that holds it together, the sharing, that is what comes from our mother. And you have expressed it beautifully. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have to pull my beard again.